Hey guys, Brad here from Wild Guide Magazine. I'm here again today with Stu Thompson, who's walking us through the ins and outs of fly fishing so we can get out there and get involved in this sport. So today we're talking about fly line and leader material, and as you can tell from the wall behind me here, it looks like there might be a lot to know. But I don't think we should be intimidated by this, and I think Stu's going to kind of help us walk us through that so we know what it is we need and kind of how to rig that, and so we can put our fly fishing rig together and get out on the water. So I'm going to turn it over to Stu here, and he's going to walk us through what's behind me on the wall here.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, now as Brad mentioned, there's a whole lot of selection in fly lines. Do you have to buy every one? No. When you first start, the thing that you have to remember, what weight of rod did you buy? Did you buy an 8 weight? Did you get the reel to match your rod size? Because what's going to happen, that line is going to go on the reel, and you have to match the line to the reel to the rod. So if you buy an 8 weight system, you have an 8 weight rod, you have a reel that fits an 8 weight line, and then you buy an 8 weight line. It's that simple. Everything is matched for you. You don't need to go back to the 30s and 40s when there was the letter designations. You really had to know your stuff because everything was mic'd out to thousandths of an inch. You don't have to do that now. So when you look at a reel, every fly line is going to have this on it. It doesn't matter who manufactures the fly line. It'll say weight forward 8 floating or WF8F. Weight forward is a single taper line. That's what we use most in our fly fishing styles, especially in Manitoba because we fly fish in the wind all the time. But 90% of the lines that are used are going to be weight forward. Gives you a line weight. F stands for floating. If you see a box with FS on it, that's a floating line with a 10-foot sinking tip. If it's a sinking line, it'll say S. If it's an intermediate sinking line, it'll say I. And that's not too hard to comprehend. The whole system is very easy. To start off with, 8 weight rod, 8 weight reel, 8 weight line. It's that simple. Beginners will always start with a floating line. It's easier to cast and pick up off the water. Once you get used to the casting aspect of fly fishing, then you can go into sinking tips and full sinking fly lines. Don't forget, sinking tips, you can get what they call a wet head or wet belly. 2 different lengths of sinking tips. Wet head is 10 foot, wet belly is 15 foot. Do you have to buy both lines? No. Same with full sinking lines. You can get the old style of sinking line, which sinks in a big U, or you get a density compensated sinking line, which sinks at the same rate all the way down. Do you have to buy both? No. Keep things simplified. Go with the floating to start with. Then you get into a sink tip, and if you get an intermediate line, that's the only sinking line you'll ever need. Because all you have to do is be patient, and that sinking line is going to keep on sinking until you retreat. Now, you heard that I mentioned weight forward. There is a double taper line. The use for the double taper is small creeks and streams and rivers that are heavily fished. Examples, the Yellowstone down in Montana, the Firehole, Gatlin, Madison. I fished all those rivers, and if you don't have a double taper line to present the fly properly, you won't catch any fish. And the reason being, I was on the Yellowstone one day, and without a word of lie, in a mile, there was probably 80 fly fishermen fishing over the same fish, which is just absolutely amazing because I was the only one catching fish. Why? Because my presentation with the double taper line was more delicate than with the weight forward. These guys were spoofing the fish with a weight forward line, whereas my line was falling just like thistle down on the water, and I was catching the fish. Okay. So you can get just a myriad of different lines. You don't have to buy them all. If you look at value, Cabela's Prestige Plus fly line is a really good fly line to go with. $50. Scientific Anglers, $34.99. So once again, it doesn't cost a fortune. There are some lines, the real lines are very, very good with what they do. Some of them are up at $120. Do you need a $120 fly line to start off? No. Right? Now once again, on sinking lines you have different sink rates. You have lines that sink a ½ inch per second, which is the intermediate line. And then you have fly lines that will actually sink up to approximately 16 inches per second. Do you need that line? No. If you go with a sinking line, type 4, which sinks at 3 to 4 inches per second, is the line to go with. So when you look at your outfit, you have to decide after you start, I want to get down and I want to fish at a certain depth. What line do I need to do that with? In my fly fishing, I use a floating and a sink tip. With those two lines, I catch 97% of my fish. When you're fishing really deep, you have to remember, if you're fishing down to 20 feet, that's fine. If you're fishing any deeper than 20 feet, the only freshwater fish that can expel gas from its swim bladder is a lake trout. So yes, you can fish down 100 feet if you want, if you have enough patience for your fly to get down there, and you won't damage your fish. Every other fish is going to get the bends, which means that the swim bladder is going to come out through the mouth and they're going to be dead. And you don't want to do that. So that's why I use a floating and sink tip. I cover the top 2 feet of water with the floating. Anything deeper than 2 feet, I use my sink tip and I can go down to approximately 12 feet. No problem whatsoever. Full sinking I use once in a while, but I only go down about 15 feet maximum, and that's usually for walleye when I fly fish walleye. Other than that, floating line, it's awesome. Now, if you only have enough money to buy one fly line, buy a floating. Because what we have nowadays are sinking leaders or sinking tips that we can attach to the floating line. So you don't have to shell out another 50 bucks for another fly line. All you do is get a sinking portion of fly line like this. That's $25. Now you can cover down to 12 feet, no problem whatsoever. It's not going to cost you a fortune. When it comes to leaders, everybody says, well, I need a tippet. That is a mistake. The tippet on a leader, and I'll undo one in a sec here, is actually the last 18 to 24 inches of the leader, which starts at approximately 40-pound test and is tapered down to whatever pound test that you want to use. So let's say it's 6-pound test. The leader will start at 40 and it's tapered all the way down to 6-pound test over a 9-foot length, or a 12-foot length, or a 7.5-foot length. I use 9-foot leaders all the time. That's just my preference, right? But you can use any one of those 3 lengths, and the leader is going to be the same. It starts at 40, tapered down to 6. So this is what they call an OX leader. Now, when you look at the leader, I'm an old-fashioned type of guy. There's guys I know that can talk to you about a leader for 2 hours straight, about thousandths of an inch and how it's made and composition of the leader, everything like that. Me, I'm a simple guy. If I want a 14-pound test leader, this is the one I choose. If I want a 6-pound, I look for the 6-pound. Just grab another one that's 7.6 pounds, right? Oh, pardon me, that's 7.5 feet. No, 7.6 pounds. Right? So, whatever it says on the package, I'm a pound type of guy. I'm not a thousandths of an inch type of guy, because to remember thousandths of an inch, it's virtually impossible to remember everything. So now when you look at the leader, like I said, I'll undo this. I'll show you a little tip when you're straightening out your leader. You see, I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but it's all coiled from being wrapped up. Okay. So to straighten this out, all you have to do is stretch it and go straight. What you're doing is just heating up the molecules, and this whole leader is now straight. There's no curl in it whatsoever. And as you can see, this is approximately 40-pound test, and you keep on going down. It gets thinner, gets thinner, gets thinner, until you hit where you tie your fly on, which is what we call a tippet. Now remember, the tippet is the last 18 to 24 inches of leader material that you have. So to make this leader last longer, you buy tippet material in the same pound test as what you have, and you can add an extra 2 to 3 feet of line to your leader. Then you're cutting into the tippet material instead of the actual tippet of your leader. So you can make this leader last. If you take care of it, this leader can last you like 2 or 3 years. All you're doing is adding more tippet material to it, which is what you want. So that's a distinction. When you look at tippet, it's tippet material or the very end of the leader. It's not the whole leader itself. The leader is a leader. Okay? That's one thing that you have to remember. Now, tippet material, you can get different tippet material. And sometimes it gets to be pricey if it's fluorocarbon. You're looking at $21 for a spool. There's nothing wrong with buying some fluorocarbon line in a 100-yard spool, which is the same price as 30 meters of fluorocarbon on a tippet spool. Fluorocarbon is fluorocarbon. Monofilament is monofilament. Right? The reason that you're using leaders is to transition the power from the fly line to make the fly line delicately enough on the water. Once you do that, once you get used to that, it's great. But once again, Manitoba fish are dumb. Remember that. Manitoba fish are dumb. So, when I use leaders, it's always in the streams that are heavily fished. Down in Montana, Alberta, BC, Colorado, Wyoming. All those streams are very heavily fished by fly anglers. That's where I use a leader. Most times I buy fluorocarbon and I will use a 9-foot chunk of fluorocarbon, just a level leader, and boom, there's my leader. Do I catch fish? Yes, I do. Do I have a problem casting it? It doesn't matter, because Manitoba fish are dumb. It's just that simple. Right? They don't care. If they see the fly, they will hit it. So it doesn't matter if it's channel cat, rainbows, browns, brookies. Unless you're fishing in a stream condition and the fish are conditioned to be real spooky, that's the only time you use the tapered leader. Now, along with that, you can get sinking leaders. Now, sinking leaders are much like this portion of the sink tip. They cost about $20. There's some that have a sink rate of 7 inches per second. Some will have a sink rate of 12 inches per second. But all it is a 9-foot sink tip, which is ideal, and you attach your tippet material to that leader, and boom, you're set to go. So do you have to buy all these different types of lines? Start with a floating line. That's your best bet. No problem whatsoever. That's it.
Well, Stu, thanks once again for all the great information. So if you followed the video so far, you now have your rod, you now have your reel, and you've got the line you're going to need to get out fishing. So what's next? We've got some videos coming on the different accessories and equipment, tools you're gonna need, and then of course we're gonna need some flies to start casting. So stay tuned for those videos. You'll find the links below. So if you liked this video and you found it useful, please click like. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for lots more great content, and head over to wildguide.ca to subscribe for your free digital subscription today. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.